The West said, oh, we believe that in everything you do, you have to base it on evidence. You have to be reasonable and logical in whatever you do. And yet, despite all these fundamental maxims of Western civilization, the West is acting irrationally. The first example, we know that the world has changed because it's become a small, interdependent world. And so, to use a simple boat analogy, the 8 billion of us live in cabins on the same boat. So when one cabin catches COVID, all 193 cabins catch COVID. The most irrational thing you can do is when your boat is sinking as a result of climate change, instead of trying to save the boat, you argue about whose cabin is more beautiful. But that's what the West is doing. For the United States to launch its geopolitical contests against China when the planet is in peril is hugely irresponsible and hugely irrational. And what's shocking is that the West has the leading universities, the leading think tanks, the leading media channels, and they don't point out that this is irrational behavior. The second example is that what's so obvious is that history has turned a fundamental corner this century. 100 years ago, 100,000 Englishmen could rule over 300 million Indian ancestors of mine, but European power has diminished. One statistic. In the year 1980, the combined EU GDP was 10 times the size of China. 10 times. Now it's the same size as China. And by 2050, Europe will be half that of China. Now, when you have these massive shifts of power happening, surely you should look for rational ways and means of adjusting. Is that happening? It's not. And the third sign of irrationality, the most important priority for any society, anywhere in the world, should be to improve the well-being of its own population. And yet, paradoxically, the United States, which is the most rational society on planet Earth, at a time when the average standard of living of the bottom 50% of the American population has stagnated for 3 decades, and the priority should be to take care of the bottom 50%, instead of focusing on people, the United States says primacy is more important than people. Any country that chooses primacy over the well-being of its own people is making an irrational decision, and nobody questions it. For the past 45 years,
no major wars.
There's been no major war. This did not happen by accident. This happened as a result of decisions made by countries and leaders here who understood that the priority is to focus on economic development and not get engaged in wars. Western scholars who said at the end of the Cold War, Asia's future is Europe's past. So in the past, Europe fought all the big wars, World War I, World War II. Oh, that's Asia's future. Paradoxically, the opposite has happened. The major wars have happened on the fringes of Europe and not in Asia. And no European asked the most basic question, why have we Europeans not learned to be as peaceful as the Asians? That's what our friend Graham Allison, as you know, keeps saying. And you know, he wrote a book called Destined for War, in which he documents that throughout history, the number one power never gives up its position gracefully. American leader can be seen to be soft on China today. Traditionally, it's the educated establishment that should be more rational and calm, and the people at large may be subject to populist moods. But in the United States, paradoxically, I'm told that if you do the surveys of the population, the people don't share the same degree of anti-China animus that you find in the establishment. But the establishment in Washington, D.C. has locked itself into an anti-China posture. And today, it's impossible for any politician to say anything, just something rational on China. When you and I trade, both of us benefit. That's why we trade. But the paradox is that even though trade, right, is a rational activity within two countries, anybody who supports trade with China is dead politically. Now, which is bizarre.